Have you ever felt like the universe was playing tricks on you? Like you kept bumping into the same person in places that didn't make any sense? That was me. It started at a bookstore in downtown Boston, one of those cozy little places with creaky floorboards and overpriced coffee. I was browsing the psychology section, nothing unusual, and I looked up and there he was, tall, quiet leather jacket. The kind of face you remember but can't quite place. He smiled at me like we already knew each other, but I didn't smile back. I just nodded, grabbed a copy of The Undiscovered Self, and walked out without looking back. 3 days later, I saw him again at Logan Airport. This time, I was late for a flight to New York. My gate had changed last minute, and I sprinted across the terminal, coffee in hand. I turned the corner and crashed right into him. Coffee spilled, papers flew, and there he was again. Same smile, same calm eyes. He helped me gather my stuff and said, "I think the universe really wants us to meet." I laughed awkwardly and muttered something about bad luck and caffeine, but my heart was pounding and I couldn't explain why. Later that night, I found myself Googling something I never thought I'd type. What does it mean when you keep seeing the same person? I wasn't into fate or soulmates or any of that Reddit soulmate thread stuff. I worked in fintech, I believed in numbers, not signs. But something about this felt different. I kept telling myself it was coincidence, a glitch in the matrix. Until it happened again. 1 week later. Rooftop party, snow falling in Boston. I was there for a holiday networking mixer hosted by Tesla and a VC firm. I only went because my boss thought it was a good idea to show face before year-end reviews. I was sipping wine watching the snow collect on the railing when I heard someone behind me say, "You again?" I turned around, and of course, there he was. Same jacket, same smile, same unreadable eyes. His name was Alec. He was a startup consultant, blockchain advisor, real estate investor, all the buzzwords I'd normally roll my eyes at. But that night, we didn't talk about business. We talked about books, music, dreams that never made it past college. And then, out of nowhere, he said, "You ever feel like some people don't just show up in your life? They're sent." I felt a chill. And it wasn't the snow. We stood there for what felt like hours, just watching the city lights and the steam rising from our breath. No flirting, no agenda, just presence. That kind of rare stillness where your mind stops racing and your body actually listens. That night I dreamt about him, not in a romantic way, not even a clear storyline, just flashes. His hands, his voice, a sense of familiarity. I couldn't shake. When I woke up, I had a notification on my phone, a LinkedIn request from Alec. Okay, maybe that's normal. But then I noticed the weird part. We had no mutuals in fintech or Boston, but we did share a connection to a retreat center in Sedona, Arizona, one I visited 4 years ago during a burnout spiral. He'd been there too. Same month, same week. We never saw each other back then. Or maybe we did, and I just don't remember. I tried to brush it off. Coincidence again. But that night something tugged at me. I went back to my browser history and looked up something I hadn't searched since college. Carl Jung. Not for therapy, not for work. Just to remember. That's when I came across the word again, synchronicity. Jung described it as a meaningful coincidence of 2 or more events where something other than chance is involved. Something other than chance. I closed my laptop and sat in silence. Was I losing it? Or was the universe trying to whisper something? And if it was, why now? At work the next day, I couldn't focus. Numbers blurred. Emails felt meaningless. All I could think about was how I felt when I was around him. Not obsessed, not infatuated, just still. I'd dated a lot of people. Wall Street types, Silicon Valley nomads, guys who wore Rolexes to brunch and talked about crypto at weddings. None of them ever made me feel like this. And Alec, he barely said 10 sentences that night, but something about his presence, it pulled at something buried, something I wasn't ready to name yet. A few nights later, I saw his initials carved into a tree on Commonwealth Ave. I know how that sounds, I know. Maybe someone else carved those letters. Maybe it was an illusion, a trick of the light, but I felt it again, that stillness, that deep, vibrating sense that something was aligning. That night, I stood in my kitchen staring at the snow through the window holding a glass of wine I wasn't drinking. And for the first time in my life, I whispered something out loud I never thought I'd say. What if this isn't random? What if the universe sends people not when we're ready to love them, but when we're ready to see ourselves? I wasn't in love, not yet, but I was listening, and that was new. After that night in the snow, everything changed. It wasn't that Alec and I suddenly became a couple. There were no labels, no declarations, just this unspoken agreement to keep orbiting each other, closer more often without really defining what we were doing. And I didn't mind it, at least not at first. We'd text late into the night about everything and nothing. He'd send me photos of obscure books he thought I'd like. I'd send back playlists filled with moody jazz and instrumental piano. There was this rhythm between us, subtle, slow, and strangely safe. But it didn't stay that way. The more time we spent together, the more I started feeling things I couldn't explain, not just attraction, reflection. We'd be sitting across from each other at a coffee shop, and out of nowhere I'd feel completely exposed, like he could see through me, even when he wasn't looking at me. It was terrifying. He never asked too many questions, he just listened too well, like he was waiting for me to say something I hadn't even admitted to myself yet. One night we were walking through the Boston Public Garden just after dusk. The street lamps were flickering on one by one, casting soft orange halos over the snow. We were quiet for a long time. Then he asked me something that stopped me cold. "Why do you always look like you're trying to outrun something?" I laughed, but it didn't feel funny. "I'm not outrunning anything," I said, brushing it off. "I just move fast, that's all." But I knew he didn't believe me. The truth was, I'd been running my whole life, from the arguments I never had with my father, from the silence that filled my childhood home, from the fear that if I slowed down everything I buried would catch up. And somehow Alec saw it. That weekend we escaped the city. He invited me to a cabin he sometimes rented in Vermont. I said yes without thinking, even though everything in me screamed to stay safe in the predictable rhythms of my life. The cabin was small, tucked between tall pines and frozen streams. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just us, firewood, and hours of uninterrupted time. At first, it was perfect. We cooked pasta together, played old vinyl records, laughed about nothing. For a moment, I thought, maybe this could be something real. But then late Saturday night, sitting beside the fireplace, he told me something I wasn't ready to hear. I was in love, once he said, staring at the flames, deeply. He didn't look at me as he spoke. His voice was steady, but I could feel the crack beneath it. She got sick. Early onset Alzheimer's. She forgot my name before her 35th birthday. My breath caught. She was gone long before she died, he continued. And I couldn't stay. I left when it got too hard. There it was. The mirror, I saw my own worst fear reflected in him. Abandonment, loss, running when things got too real. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, letting the silence stretch between us. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just drawn to Alec because of how he made me feel. I was drawn to him because he mirrored the parts of myself I hadn't faced, the part that avoided hard conversations, the part that feared being needed, the part that ran before anyone could leave me. Carl Jung once said, "We don't see people as they are. We see them as we are." I think Alec was seeing the same thing in me. The next morning I woke up and found him outside splitting wood in the snow. No words, no eye contact. Something had shifted. The drive back to Boston was quiet. No music, no laughter. Just this heavy fog between us, like neither of us wanted to acknowledge what we'd just uncovered. That night he didn't text me. Neither did the next night. And suddenly the stillness that used to feel like peace felt like punishment. I stared at my phone, refreshing the screen like a habit I couldn't break. I told myself not to care. But the truth was, I was unraveling. I kept replaying the weekend in my mind, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, what I'd said, what I'd missed. But maybe nothing was wrong. Maybe the truth was just too much for both of us. He saw the shadow I'd worked so hard to bury, and I saw his. And maybe that kind of truth doesn't lead to romance. Maybe it just leads to awakening. The next morning I pulled out my old journal, the one I hadn't touched since college, and I wrote a sentence I never thought I'd admit. I'm afraid of being loved because I don't know if I'd survive losing it. That's when I knew. This wasn't about Alec. It was about me. About the parts of myself that only surfaced in the presence of someone who saw past the facade. Someone who didn't try to fix me, but made me feel things I didn't want to feel. That's what mirrors do, right? They don't show you what you want to see. They show you what's already there, whether you're ready or not. When Alec invited me to San Francisco, I said yes before thinking it through. I told myself it was just a weekend getaway, just two people who'd shared something rare trying to figure out what it meant. But deep down, I knew I was hoping for something more, a sign, a shift. Maybe even a beginning. I booked the flight packed light and landed just after noon on Friday. He was supposed to meet me at the airport. I even wore the sweater he said he liked once in passing, cream oversized, too warm for the West Coast, but perfect for hiding how nervous I was. But Alec wasn't there. No text, no missed call, just silence. I waited at the terminal for over an hour before calling a rideshare and heading to his apartment in Hayes Valley. When I got there, nothing. The lights were off. His car was gone. I rang the bell twice, waited, then left. I kept checking my phone like it was a lifeline. Every 5 minutes. Nothing. One day turned into two turned into three. I stayed in a hotel downtown, trying to pretend I was just there for the food, the views, the escape. But every time I walked by the waterfront or watched the sun set over the bay, I felt this sinking weight in my chest. Something was wrong. On the third night, I sat alone in my room, scrolling through Instagram, trying to distract myself. That's when I saw it. A photo on his old startup's private Slack profile, a pitch deck uploaded under my name. It hit me like a punch to the gut. The logo was familiar. So was the product, a blockchain-based identity verification tool we'd once casually brainstormed over dinner, but I never agreed to pitch it. I never gave him permission to use my credentials. And there it was, my face, my title listed as co-founder in a presentation I'd never seen before. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so layered, I didn't even know where to start unraveling it. Was this why he brought me here? Was this some calculated move I didn't see coming? Or was I just convenient? I texted him one last time. I saw the deck. I know what you did. No reply. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was cry. I felt used, discarded, like some kind of muse/access pass he'd borrowed and then left behind when I wasn't useful anymore. The next morning I was packing my bag when the hotel desk called someone had dropped off an envelope for me. Inside was a photo, us from the cabin in Vermont. Me laughing, eyes closed, him staring at me like he was trying to memorize my face. No note. Just the photo, and for some reason that made it worse. I clutched it in my hand and felt something break open inside me. The rage wasn't just about the startup. Or the silence. It was about all the times I ignored the signs. All the little ways I let myself shrink, just to keep the connection alive. I threw the photo into the trash. Then I booked the next flight back to Boston. The plane ride felt endless. I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I just sat there in a haze of heartbreak, my mind racing with every conversation, every missed signal, every moment I thought we were building something real. When I got home, the first thing I did was pour myself a glass of wine. Then I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. I typed the words. He didn't just mirror my fears, he used them. It wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. For days, I barely left my apartment. I went through every stage, anger, sadness, self-blame. But somewhere in that storm, something shifted. This wasn't just another breakup. This was a reckoning. Alec hadn't just ghosted me. He'd exposed a part of me I hadn't known was still bleeding. The part that still thought I had to earn love by being useful. The part that confused chemistry with connection. The part that wanted to believe in signs so badly, I ignored every red flag I went through our old texts. Read them like they were a script. And somewhere around midnight, I whispered to myself, he didn't come to stay. He came to show me where I was still broken. And that hurt. God, it hurt. But it also freed me. Because maybe that's the point of some connections. Not to complete you, but to crack you open, to make you see what you've hidden. To make you face what you've feared, and maybe, just maybe, to push you toward the version of yourself that doesn't settle for someone who disappears when it gets real. I slept that night for the first time in days, not peacefully, but honestly, and in the morning I woke up and knew exactly what I had to do next. I didn't book the retreat to find peace. I booked it because I couldn't hear myself think anymore. The noise inside me had become too loud, memories looping on repeat, Alec's silence like static in my bloodstream. I needed space. Not from him, from everything. So I flew to Sedona. I hadn't been back since that burnout year when I'd sat alone in a meditation circle and felt absolutely nothing, but this time was different. I wasn't here to escape the world, I was here to face what it had cracked open inside me. The retreat was quiet. No cell service, no clocks, just red rocks, wind, and breath. I stayed in a small adobe-style cabin with a single bed, a journal, and a wooden altar that smelled faintly of cedar and sage. Each morning started with silence and ended with fire. On the first night, I sat under the stars and tried to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I wasn't numb, I was hollow. And somewhere in that emptiness, I started writing. I didn't start with a love letter. I started with a confession. I lost myself trying to be seen by someone who couldn't see himself. Every morning I added to it. I wrote about the first time I felt abandoned as a kid when my dad missed my piano recital because he had meetings that ran late. I wrote about the boy in college who said I was too intense after I cried watching a sunset. I wrote about all the ways I'd learned to armor up to make myself useful, agreeable, low maintenance, and how Alec didn't ask me to do any of that. But I did it anyway. Automatically. Out of fear. Out of habit. By the third day, I stopped wearing makeup, stopped pretending I was fine. I ate in silence. I walked the canyon trails until my legs burned. I let the sun bake into my skin and the wind tangle my hair. I sat by the fire each night and watched other women cry into the flames. Everyone was letting go of something, marriages, identities, illusions. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to fix anyone, including myself. On the fourth day, we were asked to bring something symbolic to the evening fire ceremony, something to release. I didn't hesitate. I reached into my journal pouch and pulled out the silver pen, the one Alec had given me in Vermont, the one he said he always used when something felt true. Back then I thought it was romantic. Now it just felt heavy. That night we gathered in a circle beneath the stars. No talking, just drums and breath and the crackle of burning cedar. One by one, people stepped forward, whispered their goodbyes, and tossed their items into the fire. When it was my turn, I hesitated. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I realized something. I wasn't letting go of Alec. I was letting go of the part of me that believed I needed someone like him to feel worthy of love. I stepped forward, held the pen in my palm, and whispered, "Thank you," for the mirror. Then I dropped it into the flames. It hissed as it hit the embers, the metal flashing once, then curling into the ash, and something inside me unclenched. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't instant peace, but it was a beginning. That night I slept deeply. No dreams, no interruptions, just rest. Real rest. The kind that only comes when you stop clinging to people who were never meant to stay. The next morning I woke up early and hiked to a ridge overlooking the red rocks. The wind was sharp, the sun hadn't fully risen, but I felt okay. Not happy, not healed, just okay. And that was enough. I sat on the edge of the cliff and pulled out my journal. This time, I didn't write about Alec. I wrote about myself, about the woman who'd finally stopped begging for signs. The woman who now understood that the universe didn't send him to complete her. It sent him to break the shell she'd been living in, so she could finally meet herself. And here she was, tired, bruised, braver. That night, I looked at the stars again. No signs, no whispers, just a sky too big for words, and a silence that didn't feel empty anymore. It felt honest. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for a message from the universe. I was the message. When I landed back in Boston, it felt different. Not louder or colder, just clearer. Like the city had stayed the same, but I hadn't. The noise of the traffic, the rush of people in crosswalks, the Starbucks lines that wrapped around corners. It all felt familiar, but I didn't feel like I was rushing to catch up anymore. I unpacked slow. I let the silence linger. I opened my laptop, not to run, but to rebuild. Within 2 weeks, I got an offer to represent our firm at an upcoming investor summit in Manhattan, Wall Street. Big names, bigger pressure. The old me would have said yes, for validation, for status, for the illusion that being needed equaled being valued. This time I said yes because I was ready, not to prove anything, but to show up as myself fully. I wore the same cream sweater on the train ride that I wore the day I first waited for Alec at SFO, but now it wasn't armor, it was just a sweater. The gala was held in a sleek high-rise overlooking the skyline glass walls. Orchestras playing movie themes, people sipping cocktails with words like disruption and legacy portfolio dancing on their tongues. I stood near a window with a drink in my hand, watching the city pulse beneath me when I felt it. That shift, that tug. I turned around, and there he was. Alec. He looked the same, maybe a little older in the eyes, but still him. The jacket. The stillness, the silence that carried more weight than most people's monologues. Our eyes met, and for a moment it felt like everything I'd burned in that fire came back to life, but only for a moment. He walked toward me slowly like he didn't know what to say. I smiled first. Hi. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. Hi, he said softly. You look centered. I laughed under my breath. That's a first. There was a pause, one of those long, stretching silences that used to make me uncomfortable. But not now. Not anymore. I'm sorry, he said. For everything. I nodded. I know, I replied. And thank you. His brow lifted, surprised. Thank you for what? For being the storm that showed me what I needed to heal, I said. For reflecting everything I was too afraid to see on my own. He looked down for a second, maybe expecting more. A plea, a question, a crack in my voice, but there wasn't one. We stood in that quiet understanding, no need to force anything. No final monologue, no movie scene kiss, just release. He placed something on the cocktail table beside me, a card. No name, no number, just a handwritten sentence. Not all signs are destinations, some are directions. I didn't pick it up. I let it sit there, because I didn't need it, not anymore. I watched him walk away, blending into a sea of dark suits and champagne flutes, and I felt nothing heavy. Only light. I stayed at the event another hour, took meetings, smiled when I meant it, walked away when I didn't. Later that night, I stepped outside into the chilled air of Lower Manhattan. Taxis honked. Steam rose from the manholes, and I breathed in something I hadn't in a long time. My own peace. The kind that didn't come from someone else's approval. The kind that didn't beg for signs. It just existed. Back at my hotel, I changed into sweats and opened my journal. I flipped past every old entry about him, every heartbreak post-mortem, and started fresh. This time, I didn't fall in love with a man I wrote. I fell in love with the woman who survived him. I closed the book and looked out at the city, one last time before bed. The lights blinked like constellations, imperfect, scattered divine, and I thought about how far I'd come, how I stopped needing answers, how I stopped chasing signs as permission to feel. Because here's what I've learned. The universe does send people into our lives, but not to complete us, to mirror us, to stir us, to wake us up. Some stay, most don't, but every single one of them is a chapter, not the whole story. And the moment you stop mistaking the sign for the destination is the moment you start writing the next one yourself. Now I walk through this world not looking for someone to fill my silence. I honor it, I protect it, I build from it. And if the universe ever whispers again, I'll listen. But I won't wait, because I've become the very sign I was always hoping to find.